Let's go ahead and get ESXi installed, and as a quick reminder, what you're looking at here is VMware Workstation, which is where I'm going to be running all of my environment as nested machines. You can see here on the left-hand side under Devices, I've got this ESXi-01 server with 16 gig of memory, 4 processors, and a 64 gig hard disk to install ESXi onto. So with that, I'll go ahead and power up the machine. And I've got the ISO file attached here for ESXi version 8.0. It is 8.0 update 2, but for the sake of the exam here, the version doesn't matter too much. So let's go ahead and let the installer load up here. And by the way, just as another reminder, in my Active Directory DNS, I have also gone ahead and put in forward and reverse DNS records for this server. So I've got ESXi-01.globomantics.com resolving to the IP address that I'm going to set for the management network here on this ESXi server in just a few moments. And after just a few minutes, we're now here at the installation screen. So I'll press enter to continue there. And then we need to accept the end user license agreement with F11, and it'll scan those local devices now to see what storage I've got available to install ESXi onto. And you'll notice here it has recognized my 64 gig disk, so I'll just press enter to proceed with that. US default is fine for me for the language, and then you need to enter in a password for the root account. And the passwords match there, which is good news. And we just now need to confirm that we're going to install ESXi onto that specific disk, and it will be repartitioned. So if you've got any existing data on that disk, obviously be aware that this will go ahead and repartition and wipe that disk. So with that, pretty straightforward, right? I'll press F11 to install, and that'll go off and proceed with the installation of ESXi. And when it reboots, we'll be looking at the main interface for ESXi, the DCUI, and we'll go in and do the management network configuration. Oh, there we go. There is actually a prompt to remove the installation media before rebooting, and that installation is complete. So I'll press enter to reboot there, and that'll go ahead and boot into ESXi now. And awesome, we are now at the main DCUI console interface for ESXi. And to manage the host, I need to either go to that IP address, which has been picked up by DHCP there, or in this case, I'll just press F2 and then enter my password to log in, and we'll do the management from the console here. So what I want to do initially is just come down to configure management network, because I need to change a few things here. And first of all, if I go into network adapters, you'll see I've got 4 network adapters assigned to this ESXi host, where VMNIC 0 and VMNIC 1, I'll press the space bar there to enable that for management. Those two are going to be my management network interfaces. VMNIC 2, the next one down here, that is going to be for our storage network, which we'll set up in the next couple of clips. And then VMNIC 3 is connected to that isolated network where we'll be doing vCenter high availability in the next module within this course. So we don't need to touch that for now. So I want to use VMNIC 0 and VMNIC 1. So I'll press enter on that one. We don't need a VLAN in my environment because I'm not doing anything with physical switches. I'm going all nested here within VMware Workstation. But then for the IPv4 configuration, I do want to set a static address here. And for my host, it's going to be 192.168.200. Whoops. There we go. .21 for the IP address for the host, which is a /24 subnet. And the gateway is indeed over at .1. So that all looks great. I'll come down here to the DNS configuration, and I'll set this, my primary DNS server is actually going to be .15, because .15 is the IP address of my Active Directory domain controller that I've also configured in this environment. And for the host name, this is going to be ESXi-01. So I'll press enter to save those settings. And down under custom DNS suffixes, this is going to be globomantics.com. And with that said, that's everything that we need for the management network. So I'll press escape there, and then it will say, hey, I need to restart the management network to apply these changes. So I'll press Y because we're all good to do that now. And if you ever need to, there is an option here to be able to test the management network. And if I launch that up, what it's going to do is a couple of pings and try and resolve its own host name as well. So if I kick off that test, we can see that it can ping the gateway over at .1, it can ping my domain controller or DNS server over at .15, and it is able to go ahead and resolve the host name as well, because I had already put those entries in DNS for the forward and reverse lookups for this host. So that has all worked great. And with that, that's pretty much it. The ESXi host is now configured. It's on the management network. And just to confirm that, if I jump across here, across to my desktop machine, which is where we'll be doing most of the work in this lab, in the web browser here at the top, if I just browse over to that server, which was ESXi-01. If I can type globomantix.com, we should get the host UI for the ESXi host. Now, as expected, the connection isn't private because the SSL certificate that is on the ESXi host is not trusted because it's just a self-signed certificate. So my Windows 11 desktop machine is saying, hey, that is not a valid certificate, but I'm going to continue through. And here is the host client for ESXi. And if I go ahead and just enter the root credentials here, this should log me into the ESXi host client where we can now go and configure and manage this host individually. And we'll continue doing that in the next couple of clips to configure some more networking and get it mounted to some shared storage.